Nikhil can't hear you. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Is it regular events?
We try to do one every 2 weeks. This
Okay.
is our third in the series.
Okay. I really didn't know the context. I got just a call that, come and have a chat. So that's why I
Yeah,
asked.
well, that's a good enough context. That's exactly what we'll do. We'll simply have a chat.
Okay. Sounds good. Anyway, now it's become part of life just to look at the screen and talk.
Unfortunately.
Well, not really. We are getting good things done because we are bookending our time, not traveling hours in this traffic, horrendous traffic, because I'm in Bandra and my office is in Sea. So it takes almost 3 hours to go up and down. So
Right.
that time we save. One. Number two is that uh, we are making productive use of time. However, you know, shaking somebody's hand and having a cup of tea with him is a different matter altogether. That I miss. I miss
Yeah.
meeting clients. I mean, we do FaceTime or we do Teams and go Zoom and what have you. But
Yeah.
nothing like sitting across the table with the client and trying to understand his real issue, real problem, and trying to solve it. Okay, that is we are more into problem solving kind of a business.
Yes.
So many times the client doesn't know how to what problems he has. So when we
Yeah.
chat, we come out somehow we emanate a solution for him if we chat with him. On the screen, you are limited to a large extent. You know.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's also challenging to build a company and to manage a large workforce like you have remotely. Though you're probably doing operations across the world for many years now, and you've had to do some of those things remotely. But that's probably another challenge that at least we are facing.
Yes, that is a problem. I mean, again, I said that we have enough middle management to look after the operation part of it, but I'm more into selling concepts. So sitting across table with my clients, and like we have a sizable presence in Saudi Arabia, you
Right.
know, and other parts of the world. So that's I miss, because many times when you sit across, you get a better feel of what they're looking for. One, and you're able to express some innovative thoughts, which kind of start the whole process, get the ball rolling.
Right.
Everything goes on tender, RFP, and all those things. But the sales cycle is too long for in our business. So you need to come up with something which is innovative, which will click to him. Now, on
Fair
the
enough.
on this video call, it's difficult to do those things. I'm realizing it now. You
Yeah.
However, working with the team has become easier in the sense
Okay.
like what has happened is that we have offices all over, and many of the team members don't meet. They
Right.
honor each other. They they exchange calls or emails, but they don't meet. So now we have these regular meetings where everybody is together, and
Right.
we give it funny names. Like when we work with Geo on many interesting projects. We call that Geo Mere Lal. Then we have Chai Pani. Every Saturday we have Chai Pani Better. So we try to make it. We have the coffee beans when we think about new ideas. You know, so
Interesting.
we made it sound interesting for people and give it different names, and uh, even everybody's encouraged to bring a cup of tea at 4 o'clock and have tea with me.
Okay, interesting.
Try to
No,
do.
yeah. Well, before this call, you and I spoke about how you're in charge of innovation and business models, so I can understand where that is coming from. And I think all of us have had to find new ways. Yesterday, we hosted our first online game night for our team as a way of bonding and for everyone to interact, and that was a completely new experience to play games on Zoom. But it was
Yes.
fun. It's definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, we have to innovate. We have to improvise. Such is life. What can you do? We have to. I mean, I've been to I haven't been to my office for last 8 months. March first week was the last time I went to office.
Yeah.
And but except but 2 days before Diwali, I got fed up. I said, I called my key people. I said, I'm going to bring food from home. We're going to have lunch together. Enough. So we about 10, 12 of us. We met in my
Nice.
office, which I don't call my office. My office is called studio. So met
Nice.
in my studio, and we sat and spent about good 3 hours, chatting away. So it was nice to see my own
Okay.
team. I see them every day, but see them in
Okay.
person was nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's good
See
to
them
hear.
wearing proper clothes was nice.
And I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Maybe I didn't realize that you stay in Bandra because so do I, and maybe
Yeah.
we could have met and done this in person. I stay very close to Linking Road.
Okay, I'm in Pali Hill, a building called Sam Shiba, which is a Nargis Dutt Road,
Okay, got it.
and which is very close to next to Glukmar's old one, if you
Okay,
can
okay, okay, got it,
know landmarks. I'm in
got it.
mapping business, so I have to give you landmarks to reach here. Okay.
Fair enough. No, maybe sometime offline I'll catch you for a coffee.
Sure. But my building doesn't allow anybody from outside. When they do, I
Okay,
will definitely invite you.
sounds good. Hi, Karthike. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Nikhil.
Hi,
Good evening. Thank you.
pleasure to have you. Mr. Hemrajani is also on the call, and we've just been chatting. But give us a few minutes, and we'll start this webinar.
Sure, why not?
Hi, Karthikeya. This is Om Hemrajani. Please call me Om.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Om. Hi. Good
I
evening.
always tell people to
Nice
say
meeting
my
you.
name, say my name many times. You might get nirvana also.
Okay, why don't we get this started? And we have already several people on the call, but and I'm
Good.
sure based on our previous experiences, a few other people will join us in the next few minutes.
Sure.
Um, Om and Karthike, thank you again for taking time, and most importantly for building this association with GRIP and allowing us and our investors to participate in the story behind your companies. The objective of setting up this webinar is to allow companies such as yours, and we are in the industry, we are in the business of taking new companies who are doing different things in the high tech space to our investors and creating investment opportunities out of it, which also means that a lot of investors have not necessarily experienced your product, may not have read about it, may not understand the technology or the business models behind it. And we want to give them an opportunity to hear directly from you what is it that makes your business tick, what are the challenges, but what are the opportunities that they should think about as they consider making an investment. Right? As I've spoken with both of you, the format of this conversation is a very free-wheeling chat spread across 45 minutes to an hour, with the objective of hearing from you about both your backgrounds as well as the business, and then answering some questions. I'll front end some of the questions that our investors have given to us or are commonly asked, but we'll open the floor to any questions that may come across on the chat. Perfect. Karthike, would love to start with you. Also, the format that we've followed for the last two times is to have two businesses, one for whom we have already completed a financing. And Karthike, happy to inform you that the charge zone financing for electric chargers was completed this Thursday very successfully. We had a large number of investors participate, probably one of our largest number of investors in any single transaction, and completed in probably a record time. The transaction, in fact, got oversubscribed, and we've been having demands to do another transaction, which we look to do in December for the same assets. Uh, But on that note, would love to hear from you in terms of your background, as well as a little bit about ChargeZone and the business you're building.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikhil. And yeah, thanks to Grip Invest team for having me here. Well, my name is Kartikeya Haryani, and I'm from ChargeZone. I've been the student of electrical engineering for the last 20 years. And having worked largely in the space of power sector and later on renewable energy and energy storage, especially over the last 10 years. So ChargeZone as an idea did came to us a couple of years ago, where when I was traveling, one of the few flights is now rarity, by the way, but it was an opportunity to understand an EV ecosystem by late 2017. And having come from a background of power sector, it was pretty much evident that for us to get into something scalable was a business of electricity by itself. And the business of electricity itself do not offer much beyond, let's say, if you want to create a distribution company and then sell electricity to the consumers, right? But it came, the EV ecosystem did came in when we came across certain government initiatives in the late 2017, when they started drafting out new policies for electric vehicle industry, for manufacturing, for infrastructure, and other incentives for EV component manufacturing as well. And for us, having come from a background such as the power sector, getting into an EV ecosystem from a charging point of view was a very natural extension, considering our expertise where we come from. And fortunately, in April 2018, government declared EV charging as a service and not as a power trading opportunity. And having de-licensed or deregulating the entire thing helped us to create ChargeZone. It was actually 15th April 2018 when we created ChargeZone. Obviously, created the company much later on, but having since we deal with the regulatory hurdles or opportunities, likewise over the last several years, it was very evident to us that we need to be at least chalk out a way where the regulations are into place, or at least they don't become hurdles in the future. And amongst over the last 2 years, we did had a part of success, a bit of failure as well, I would say. But it was amongst the early best decisions that we took was to create our own technology platform. In other words, we have what we call as Charge Cloud, which is a cloud-based EV charging and net data monitoring system. So in layman's term, each EV charger is connected to the data network, and every minute you monitor the charges in terms of what vehicle has come, what energy it has dispensed, what billing has taken place, and so on. And that pushed us into a very new paradigm of what we call as unmanned EV charging network. And fast forward today, we have now close to 123 charging stations across 8 different cities in India, across 7 different states. And I must say that we just have a team of 2 people, managing the EV charging network. So this has been a journey so far as a team and as a company. And obviously, over the next decade, we would like to reach a milestone of 1 million charging points or 100,000 charging stations for electric cars, electric buses, and any other vehicles that there's part of this ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah. And Kartikeya, the way we try to simplify your business proposition was to think about it as the fuel stations of the future, where petrol is going to be replaced by electricity. Your charging stations are already powering both cars with companies like BlueSmart and Mahindra, but also buses with people like Ashok Leyland and Shuttle. And these charging stations, by being, as you mentioned, IoT enabled and tech enabled, are really less manpower intensive, but also have much more control in terms of information that is being provided to both the operator and the customer, that really allows him to plan his mobility needs.
That's correct.
Right. If you could also, given that the opportunity that we had listed from ChargeZone was specific to a project in Ahmedabad with Ashok Leyland, if you could throw some light on that project, that would be useful.
So I would just give a kind of a flashback to this electric bus industry as it is growing. Yeah. So the major major initiative came from government under what you call as a FAME 2 program, and FAME 2 is an acronym for faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. And under that outlay, 10,000 crores has been allocated to the industry, out of which 95% goes towards three-wheelers and four-wheelers, which are meant for commercial purpose. In the sense, the government has set up priorities that they want to move people, means encourage shared or public mobility rather than personal mobility. Of course, two-wheelers is an exception out here. And amongst that, various municipal bodies across India have taken a target of roughly 8 to 10,000 electric buses. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation being one of them, followed by Delhi, Jaipur, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Pune, even now Bangalore and Chennai as well. And of course, Patna, because Patna is actually also another contract that you just won last month. So under this program, municipal corporations are adopting electric buses on what is called as gross cost contract. In a sense, government do not own buses. They have kind of encouraged the private participation under the public-private partnerships, wherein various mobility companies or even bus OEMs like Tata Motors, Ashok Leyland, JPM, BYD, Electra, etc., are investing and deploying the buses, and they get paid per kilometer. And this is again what you call as a minimum performance guarantee, in the sense that every bus on an average clocks anywhere from 65 to 70,000 kilometers a year, and they got to clock this. And for Charzone, it became an opportunity. We call this as an XYZ formula, which means X number of buses, they run for Y number of kilometers a year, they need Z number of energy units per year. So we entered into what we call as a minimum offtake formula. And so this was our early initiative into B2B space, B2B and B2B2C per se, which kind of give a visibility to the cash flow, because after all, when you are investing capital and these are all long-term contracts, you got to have very, very strong visibility of being EBITDA positive and encourage more capital deployment, either on equity, debt, being an asset-light strategy like through Grip Invest we are doing it. So to encourage this, it was pretty clear that if you are not EBITDA positive, nobody's really going to buy in this idea, or rather it won't be a sustainable business model for us. So this under a mainstream scheme, which is encouraged by the central government, percolating down to the municipal bodies and hence the private participation, this has been the opportunity for Charzone into electric bus sector.
Great, thank you so much. And on that note, Om, sticking to the theme of mobility, that's also obviously a theme that is very important to your company. And you guys are doing some fascinating stuff around autonomous vehicles, apart from several other industries that you're touching upon. Would love to hear a little bit about yourself and about the company.
Well, thank you, Nikhil. About me, I got a varied background. Family is an oil business, was an oil business, edible oil business. And but I broke away and went to US and worked as econometrician, got my few degrees, and came back for some, again, family reasons, and started a company called Tangerine, which was way back in '85. Tangerine was a distributor for Compaq, IBM, and Apple. We introduced Apple in India. We introduced PCs in India. We're the first retailers, computer retailers in India. We had many showrooms here in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, other places. Then that market became like a dog eats dog market. So we kind of exited that hardware business and got into, in '95, into something called geoscience, geomatics business. That time in '95, people had not heard of what is GIS. GIS was just if some people had heard of it, it would be just digitizing some drawings. That was
Sure.
We were the first company to start photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is the art and science of making maps, basically. All right. At that time, one did not know that maps will play such an important part in life. Nobody knew. All right. Maps were largely tools for engineers to do their planning, monitoring, and design. It wasn't, consumers didn't use maps. I mean, of course, overseas they used A to Z, or they used Rand McNally to find directions to go from one place to another. They were paper maps, not very friendly, very difficult to use. But every vehicle used to have A to Z in UK and Rand McNally in United States. So we then got together with a company in New York called Genesis. Tangerine and Genesis merged way back in almost 99. And I spent a lot of time in New York in White Plains trying to understand the GIS market as it happens over there. The business model that we decided to take was not to be in the fish market, but be in the niche market. We did not want to be just a company who's taking work from overseas, bringing it to India, and using that cost arbitrage to perform some services. That was not the deal. So we, in fact, before Google Maps started, we tied up with a German company and did the visual mapping of whole of Florida. This was long time ago. For some reason, that project didn't take off because the investment required was very large. And at that time, there was a cusp of into mapping. 1 meter satellite had come into picture, space imaging, digital globe, and so forth. So there were a lot of exciting things happening. And I moved to a place called Denver, which is the mapping capital of the world. Was now every place mapping capital. So there we were interacting with all these people who were ex-military intelligence. Mapping was domain of military, still is, by the way, many ways. So we again got back to India and we started over here 3 lines of businesses in Genesis. One was just to keep the pot boiling. We were the partners to several, large map makers. Today, for instance, we have 1,000 people working for Apple in the last 5 years. Apple is making their own maps, Apple Maps, which do. Apple doesn't like the idea of Google Maps being sitting on their machine, all right, and for right reasons. So they're investing about billions of dollars to create their own map, Apple Maps, which should be, I think it is, better than Google Maps. Okay, not been in US has been launched, not in other parts of the world, but will be very shortly. Second line of business that we had was basically creating innovative solutions. Years ago, consumers didn't care much about maps in India or elsewhere. Then came Google Maps. So Google Maps are navigation maps, telling you go right, go left, how to reach your place, right? They navigate you to a destination. And that became synonymous with everything you do. Today, most of the e-commerce companies depend on maps. Imagine a world with no digital maps. How would Amazon function? How would Uber function? All the aggregators or e-commerce companies, how would Swiggy function? I would not get my evening snack if I didn't have a map around, right? So all these, most of the e-commerce companies, especially delivery engines, sit on a map. Without that, you won't be able to reach some place, all right? Simple as that. But this is the consumer part of it. However, maps are largely used by urban bodies, utilities, infrastructure. Every major project requires a map. Building a dam, you require a map, right? For disaster management, you need a map. For urban planning, collect property taxes, you need a map, all right? To plan COVID operations, we have contributed significantly to Bombay Municipal Corporation to build a map for them. Today, the COVID operation of MCGM sits on Genesis map, which of course was given without any cost to it. So we then try to identify, the problem statements and to come up with innovative solutions for these problem statements, So in about 10 years ago, we introduced a concept of 3D maps. The current scenario is that all maps, what is a map? Map is a representation of reality. Simple as that, a reality of a road could be represented by a line or by a photograph, right? Or a 3D model where each and every road furniture is visible, your street lights, your manholes, etc., are visible. So more accurate is the map. It gives you better ability to manage your assets well, plan, manage, monitor assets well. So Genesis was the first company to introduce 3D mapping. There's a technology called LiDAR, which is like radar, sonar. This is LiDAR technology. I won't get heavy into technology at this stage. Just to tell you that LiDAR is basically takes 360-degree view, and million points are flashed per second to hit an object and come back to the receiver. That way, since we know the speed of light, we know exactly where the point lands. So we create something called a point cloud. I'm sure some of you must have heard of that. What's LiDAR? It's been talked about, but once upon a time, we were the first ones who went door to door. I went door to door to people explaining what LiDAR is, what it can do for them. Now it's become a norm. People ask for 3D maps. All right. So this is what our claim to fame is, that we make 3D maps. Not only, by the way, autonomous cars depend totally on 3D maps. The driverless cars cannot function without a LiDAR equipment. So we got into partnership with people in US, but 3 companies are working with us. We create the data for the autonomous driving over there. That technology is pretty far away in US, forget India. It'll take some time, another 4 or 5 years. And there'll be pockets where you'll be using like, assisted homes, hospitals, universities. They'll be the first guys to use autonomous driving. I can see it happening in next 3-4 years in US. India maybe 10 years. India maybe still more than 10 years also. So we have got largely into 3D maps, and we have done a lot of interesting projects. I mean, there's so much to say, so I'll just mention a few projects. For instance, we just won a project to make 3D models of all the airports of Saudi Arabia, 28 airports, inside, outside. We do indoor mapping as well as outdoor mapping. But why you need indoor mapping of a airport? Because an airport is nothing but a huge mall with some transportation hubs, isn't it? So when it's a mall, when you get into mall, you don't want to waste your time trying to look for a certain stall, a certain kiosk, or certain object. So we do indoor mapping for them, navigate them to the right place. And also, since the time that you spend in an airport is limited. So if some store at the airport wants to send you, has a special deal, they can send notifications out to you, if they know you're inside. So that's a different set of technology which has not come to India yet. We are trying to build it over here also. Taking the cue from what we're doing in Saudi Arabia. Another interesting project that we have done is SRA project, Slum Rehabilitation Authority. We all know what is SRA, right? The biggest issue of SRA was the government could not determine, the SRA authority, that who lives there, how much space does he have, how much is he entitled to when the builder takes over. So we are the only ones in Asia who have developed with Hexagon, with Leica as part of Hexagon, a backpack LiDAR, because the lanes in a slum area are so narrow and so busy, and there's no light, and you cannot get GPS signals, which is our bread and butter. Without GPS, we cannot function. So we worked with a company called GeoSlam and created a new method of mapping the very difficult areas. This project was done successfully, and it was written about it all over the world. We were invited to give some papers in San Diego, and Hexagon, in fact, had a huge ad saying that map the unmapped like Genesis does, because that was a very difficult project to map slums of Bombay. We all know that almost 58% people in Bombay live in slums, and the CSR is a very interesting project to, try to alleviate the problems of the urban poor, as we all know that. Then another interesting project that we're doing right now is creating a term that you'll be hearing very often called digital twin. Okay, digital twin is nothing but the digital twin, okay, of this any object, city, towers, windmill tower, what have you. So we are making digital twin of Jaipur city, which is probably the most difficult city because it has got a lot of architectural nuances. It's not a box city like Bombay or Gurgaon or what have you. Jaipur is different. There's 3,000 square kilometers of greater Jaipur. So Jaipur city itself is 700 square kilometers. We are making a digital twin with a company called, the 3D Experience City company called Dassault, who made Rafael and all that. They have a platform called 3D Experience City. If you go on YouTube, you'll see Singapore is done this way. No other city in Asia except Singapore has been done that way, to that degree of accuracy. So we have got almost like 450 people working there in Jaipur because the data is so sensitive. So we have to sit in the office of the authorities and do it there. Okay, DOIT. That project probably is one of the feather in a cap. It's a 3-year project. Okay. Another interesting project that is happening now, and very soon, we all have heard of 5G, right? 5G infrastructure cannot be made without an accurate, very accurate, 5 centimeter to 10 centimeter map. Where each and 5G is the millimeter wave cells. They have great propensity to be deflected by any object. All right. So the line of sight is very important. So maps have to be made very accurate to see of not only just of roads and buildings and other infrastructure, but also trees. A leaf can obstruct a 5G signal. So we are working closely with 5G guys, developing this 5G maps.
I think, thank you so much for contextualizing it, because I think it brings, you've drawn examples that impact each one of our lives and hence make it more relatable to what Genesys does as a company. And, you mentioned LiDAR, and LiDAR camera is the asset that we are looking to lease to you on the platform. One of the things that, and I know this because I've spoken to your team, is that not only is it just the mapping, but really the software behind it. Like you said, the catering to the niche market and not just being a service provider, but it's a software behind it that is also developed by Genesys to really visualize. And maybe you could spend a couple of minutes talking about both those aspects of the company.
You see, there are 2 elements to map making. Okay. One is the crafting the map itself. And that could come, we use satellite imagery, we use aircraft, we use drones, we use mobile LiDAR, we use backpack LiDARs, we use handheld LiDARs. We collect all this data, the source data, and then process it to make the map which is desired for the certain, application. But then once you create a 3D data, I remember going to the commissioner of Pune, and I showed him 3D data 8-9 years ago. So what do I do with it? Great data. What do I do with it? So we essentially have to build applications sitting on this data to solve real world problems. So we had to build a team. So we have a team of almost 60 engineers now, and IT developers who are constantly building, solutions which leverage this data to solve their problems. We have, for instance, there's a program called BharatNet. Have you heard of BharatNet?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Every village, every home, every Modi ji's plan is should be connected. All right. For that, there's a big mapping project going on all over. Infrastructure project going on to set up the fiber in the ground. All right. So we team up. We work with probably everybody, with L&T, with Sterlite, with Geo, all the guys, with VTL, with Tata Projects. We work with them to create the map up to the village level, all right, and plan their fiber, how the fiber should reach the destination, all right. For that, for them to use that map, we have created a solution called Telescape. Telescape gives them not only the map, but the visual perspective of the certain area. So how will this fiber be, see, for instance, when you put a fiber in the ground, you have to pay a lot of money to the municipal corporations or the local authorities. So we need to check out whether the ground that they're going to dig is asphalt, or it's tarred land, or it's just a kacha rasta going towards the village. So, and whether there are obstructions, where there's rocks over there. So this visual come spatial data, we merge together and apply those algorithms to tell them how to reach a certain place. So this is one example.
Got it. Okay. Last question, Om, before I let you go. All of these seem like really long-term projects, right? For you to execute. Is it a 5-year, 10-year horizon that you look at some of these projects? The Apple contract you mentioned, for example, has been maybe running for 4 or 5 years as well. If you could give us some context of what those contracts may be from a time zone perspective and maybe a business model perspective.
See, if you have we are partners with, for production services, we are partners with about 5-6 large companies. One is a Japanese company called IPC, Apple, there's 3-4 other companies, one Israeli company. For the Israeli company, we create 3D models of the cell phone towers. There's another interesting subject, which, I mean, we don't have much time. I could go deep into that. So those contracts are for us forever contracts. When Apple finishes their world map, guess what they're going to do? They're going to recreate it all over again. Why? Because the world has changed. The world is not the same, okay? So suppose I'm doing city of Bombay, I'm creating a map of city of Bombay. After 4 years, Thane will look very differently. All right, Navi Mumbai will look very differently. Kalbadri won't change. All right, so mapping is a point in time data. It's not a real time data. So that data has to be updated constantly. You don't want to use Google Map and go to find a store and the store doesn't exist over there. It's closed down. So you need to update the data on a full-time basis. Of course, it's done by crowdsourcing, it's done by many probe data services. However, a mapping activity is a full-time service. So large companies like Apple, etc., is a forever contract. It doesn't close as such.
Got it.
Our own solutions, which are one-time contracts. Like I will map 28 airports of Saudi Arabia once. We may update a bit of it inside time to time. All right, that is one-time contract. The third project I forgot to mention to you, we have created. You heard of Google Street View, right? Have you heard of Google Street View in US?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So is there a Street View in India?
No, there isn't. There are some people who upload some specific pictures of a particular location, but it isn't anything comparable to Google Street View.
So we are the only guys who have been given authority, given permission by Ministry of Defense to make the Street View of India, and we've already done for 73 cities. So each and every lane, each and every street, each and every building has been captured and annotated. We will be launching that next year. You'll see, and we are planning to do 8,000 cities and towns of India.
Wow.
That probably is the largest project that we'll be doing. And out of that 8,000 towns, 300 will be in 3D, digital twins.
No, that's just fascinating to hear. Really fascinating. And my mind is so. Before Grip, I used to run a company in the mobility space. We'll talk about it some other day. But I can see the use cases for that company. But I can also see the use cases for ChargeZone on using your maps and integrating into them and their mobility needs. So I don't think there's anything that is not touched by maps, right? Every single use case requires mapping to a very large extent today in the business today. Karthikeya, on that note, if I could come to you, your business is also in a way very long term, very perpetual. Electric vehicles are not going anywhere. The government of India is putting a tremendous push to get more vehicles on the road, and the buses that we will have in electric in Ahmedabad and Patna and Chennai and everywhere else you're operating will continue to operate, right? Two questions for you. One is, how do you think of some of those contracts? How are they? What is the business model behind it? And also, to answer a couple of questions that have come on the chat, how has been COVID for you from a contractual perspective and cash collection perspective?
Sure. So yeah, I'll just answer this two-part question, one after another. Let me start with COVID first. I just saw the sort of question on chat box as well. So when we started rolling out charging stations from Feb 2019, that was That was a month actually. We started with Gurgaon, followed by Noida, and then Delhi, and then the other rest of the cities. And by December 2019, we were able to create India's first charging hub in Ahmedabad, for starting with 32 buses. And Jan 2020 was our first important month, I would say, in our little history, where we clocked 10,000 energy units sale per day. It's like equivalent to selling 10,000 liters of diesel per day, right? Now, for us, that was a very important unit of measure. And yes, COVID did brought everything to a standstill starting 21st March. And well, April was the only month, though there were a few months after that which was under lockdown fully or partially. But April was only washout month for us, because in the month of May, I think it was around 21st May, when a kind of a soft unlock happened. Our buses, or our clients' buses in Ahmedabad, started running as ambulances. And today, I think you might have heard in the news, Ahmedabad is under curfew for the next 48 hours.
That's
there
right.
was a
Yes.
lockdown
Weekend
imposed
curfew.
yesterday at 9 p.m. It will continue for 6 a.m. in the morning until Monday. Now, during this 48 hours, what's going to happen? So this buses, obviously, and they are continuing to fly. So, well, I would not really like to highlight a point that we are still making money or cash collection going on despite COVID and all. It is definitely not it's really heart-wrenching, this COVID situation. But I would like to highlight one aspect, that in the mix of the business that we have currently, and it came as a little surprise during COVID, during lockdown times, is some part of the business kept on running. And so it's kind of by coincidentally, it became a mitigation plan for us against the risk that we carry. And that is similar. And again, since we are widespread across the geographies, we believe that across the cities now, the lockdown may happen. There could be a partial lockdown, there could be curfews, just that the social distancing is really not coming very natural to Indians as compared to people in Nordic or Western Europe. But it has come as I said, very unplanned thing, but it just came as with COVID. People are still going to be on a move, because at the end of the day, it is either a choice between COVID or the economy, right? And things cannot continue for long just like that. I think we'll all have to, as a country, as citizens, we'll have to be taking an utmost self-care and and maintaining or having a discipline of as per the COVID WHO guidelines to stay negative, I would say, yeah, or rather stay positive and test negative. So in that way, COVID has been a mixed package. But yes, after the lockdown, we had a very surprising, a very strong recovery, and October was the best month. In fact, not only we achieved our pre-COVID levels in terms of billing, but we exceeded by 20% on the upside in terms of the daily revenue or collections. Yeah, and the cash collection has been on time. Yeah. So far.
Okay, great. And from your perspective, where do you see future growth happening in terms of more chargers being deployed? Is it more the government sector, more private sector? Where do you see some of those opportunities coming out?
So opportunities are always coming from the private sector, because even the government sector, as we have seen, is coming under a PPP model, public-private partnership model, right? And I will rather quote Mr. Prime Minister Modi when he was CM of Gujarat, and I was attending one of the Vibrant Gujarat conference in Ahmedabad. So this was a quote around 10 years ago, when he said, "The business of government is not to win business." In other words, it's all about encouraging the private sector participation in some of the important sectors, including mobility. So as the privatization of airports is happening, and even the railway trains are being tested on a scale to have a private company to operate trains. So when it comes to the electric mobility, I think the government has taken the priorities pretty much right, pretty much correctly, saying that have the PP model in place to encourage competitiveness.
Got it. Understood. A couple of interesting conversations, a couple of interesting questions, and we'll end this session with that. One, Karthik, is specific to you, which is around, you mentioned in the beginning about how there's less manpower at your stations. How does that prevent, or does that put a risk to vandalism and loss of the charging station? And how do you prevent that from happening?
So first and foremost, we have seen a lot of vandalism and theft in very similar looking equipments like ATMs, right? Kiosks. And there was a joke also that somebody had actually taken out a cash deposit machine thinking that it was an ATM. But nevertheless, EV chargers are subjected to high voltage applications. Yeah, so I guess it will be always be a very natural deterrent for anybody who want to really, try to break away and steal the machine. However, to our advantage currently, the charging hubs that we are creating are either at government-provided depots, like for buses, and they are on the large, overnight parking places that is coming along as a part of for fleet of cars and fleet of buses or fleet of rickshaws alike. Having said that, yes, there are other precautions that we take, like CCTV cameras and so on. Yeah, and obviously the insurance all time, an important cover, or let's call it hand of God, to protect us. But last but not least, moving forward, these EV charging points are going to, find its place in those locations where there is going to be user experience. That people do ask whether it's petrol pump or some other locations. And since the charging time taken by electric vehicles will vary anywhere from 30 minutes to let's say a couple of hours, then people really want to go and charge the vehicle where they can do something else, watch a movie, have a cup of coffee, and so on. So when we partner with some of the real estate stakeholders, which by the way, real estate equation is one of the most important equation in EV charging infra, there we find a very natural perimeter security available in the places like corporate parks or malls, multiplexes, and so on.
Understood. No, fair enough. Thank you for providing that. I'd like to conclude by asking both of you a very interesting question that's come up from one of the audience members. I'll read it out verbatim because I think it's captured well. Both are very interesting fields, both mapping and chargers. Is there an opportunity for them to work together to build a pan-India network for private electric vehicles? And where do you believe is an opportunity for investors to participate in the creation of this pan-India network as an investment opportunity? So leave aside, GRIP and participating in equity in your respective companies, but your collective thoughts on what could be another interesting opportunity for investors as India heads towards more mapping, more electric vehicles, and both of them happening together. Or maybe first, if you could, yeah.
In that visual mapping platform that we're trying to create, okay, which is the Street View of India, we call it Vonobo, by the way. Vonobo stands for World with No Boundaries. Vonobo will capture each and every asset, each and every points of interest on the ground. More than 1 million kilometers of road network, as well as all the buildings, etc. Yes, I mean every charging station will be captured as well. It has to be. Every POI, point of interest, has to be captured, and that's how people will navigate to the certain spot and take him to Karthikeya for charging their vehicle. It will be a platform which will be available on this device, of course, and even PC, whatever, So it will be certainly captured. Wherever there is a charging station will be captured on the map, visual map.
Got it. And Karthikeya, your thoughts?
Yeah, so yeah, I think just continuing what Om just mentioned. So surely our app runs on Google Maps, yeah, and our app is, apart from locational intelligence, it is a completely transactional app in the sense it has a payment gateway, a slot that you can reserve in advance, and so on. Having said that, when we talk about mapping locations, for CharZone, it will go just beyond a location itself. It will also go about what we call grid maps. When I say grid, it means the electricity grid, right? And very often the questions are asked about thermal. In fact, I just answered one on the chat box about the thermal power and renewable power mix and so on. But there will be what we call as heat maps for us, in the sense that how the traffic movement takes place within a city, within an intercity, and how the range anxiety, as we call it in e-mobility space, because of the certain range on a full charge of a battery that it provides. So for us, analyzing or various analytical tools related to mapping itself will be of tremendous use. In fact, I would say at CharZone's journey has just started, but we really require a lot of other stakeholders and access and knowledge and intelligence available as much as possible to refine those heat maps. Like, for example, we had just started talking to different dhabas and restaurant owners and so on. And we found that there are a lot of intersection of various cities, exits, and so on, which also gives a lot of insight to the traffic movement that takes place. And on top of that, various other habits, the quality of food at a restaurant, or at a particular preference, joints that a customer would have, so on. So I think it's becoming a very big data game, and so on top of the map will also be the other analytical tool coming from other fields and other stakeholders from the ecosystem. So it's going to be very interesting as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah. If I can share my 2 cents on this. I've had the privilege of working on some of these projects as a consultant with the World Bank, and in my previous assignment with a mobility company, and now financing some of these assets. Om and Kartiki, you may not be aware, but GRIP has also helped finance almost 500 electric vehicles. So if you think about the value chain that we're talking about, from charging to mapping of those locations to actually the end use case, where somewhere are contributing our little share in making that ecosystem work. But to me, electric vehicles and data are going to be the 2 large trends, especially when it comes to mobility in this next decade. The amount of emphasis that the government is playing on both aspects is critical, and because electric vehicles are so enabled by data and by sensors and not by an engine, that becomes even more interesting as an opportunity. So whether you look at it from a charging perspective, vehicle perspective, financing perspective, or leveraging the data that comes out of that ecosystem to then power the next set of vehicles or the ecosystem, I think each one of them is a very large opportunity by itself and very interesting to play in. And again, we're happy to do our part. We're happy to be providing this opportunity to our investors. Thank you so much for your time on a Saturday. You've really helped us simplify and understand your businesses and explain how that the high tech is converting into business models for tomorrow. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We'd love to do more business with you, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Karthikeyan.
Thank you to everyone who joined us on the call today.